Welcome to our journey back in time, to an era when a handful of colonies dared to stand up against the most powerful empire on Earth. The American Revolution wasn't just a battle for territory. It was a fight for ideas, for freedom, and for a new way of life. Today, we'll explore how 13 colonies, driven by the spirit of independence, managed to defeat the British Empire and change the course of history. Our story begins in the mid-18th century, in the 13 British colonies stretching along the eastern coast of what is now the United States. These colonies were bustling with life, commerce, and a growing sense of identity. But they were also feeling the weight of British rule, which, over time, became increasingly oppressive. The British Empire, in an effort to tighten its grip on these colonies, imposed a series of taxes and laws that sparked outrage among the colonists. The Stamp Act of 1765, the Townshend Acts of 1767, and the infamous Tea Act of 1773 were just a few examples of the British policies that pushed the colonies to the brink. These acts weren't just about money, they were about control. The colonists had no representation in the British Parliament, yet they were expected to pay taxes and abide by laws imposed from across the ocean. This gave rise to the rallying cry, "No taxation without representation." The tension reached a boiling point in December 1773 with the Boston Tea Party. A group of colonists, disguised as Native Americans, boarded British ships in Boston Harbor and dumped an entire shipment of tea into the water. This bold act of defiance was more than just a protest. It was a declaration of resistance. The British responded with the coercive acts, or as the colonists called them, the intolerable acts. These were meant to punish Massachusetts and scare the other colonies into submission, but they had the opposite effect. Instead of cowering, the colonies united. In September 1774, the First Continental Congress met in Philadelphia. Representatives from 12 of the 13 colonies gathered to discuss their grievances and plan their next move. They weren't yet ready to break away from Britain, but they agreed on the need for resistance. They called for a boycott of British goods and began forming militias, citizen soldiers who would be ready to defend their rights at a moment's notice. But the British weren't backing down either. Tensions continued to escalate, leading to the first shots of the revolution. On April 19, 1775, the British marched on the towns of Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts, aiming to seize colonial weapons and arrest the leaders of the resistance. The colonial militias, however, were ready. At Lexington, the shot heard round the world was fired, signaling the start of the American Revolution. The British faced fierce resistance as they marched back to Boston, with colonial militiamen firing from behind trees and stone walls. This was no formal battlefield, it was guerrilla warfare, and the British were caught off guard. The revolution had begun, but it was far from clear who would win. The British had a professional army, a powerful navy, and vast resources. The colonists had passion, determination, and the advantage of fighting on their home turf. In June 1775, the Continental Congress appointed George Washington as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. Washington was a tall, imposing figure with a reputation for leadership and a deep commitment to the cause of independence. But he faced enormous challenges. The Continental Army was poorly equipped, undertrained, and often outnumbered. Washington knew that to win, he would need more than just bravery. He would need strategy, patience, and the support of the people. One of Washington's first major tests came at the Battle of Bunker Hill in June 1775. Although technically a British victory, the heavy losses they suffered at the hands of the colonists showed that this would not be an easy war for the empire. As the war raged on, the idea of full independence began to take hold. In June 1776, the Continental Congress appointed a committee to draft a Declaration of Independence. The task fell to Thomas Jefferson, a young and brilliant Virginia lawyer. On July 4, 1776, the Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence, a document that proclaimed the colonies as free and independent states, no longer subject to British rule. This was a bold move. By declaring independence, the colonies were committing treason against the British Crown. But it was a risk they were willing to take for the sake of freedom. The British were not about to let their colonies go without a fight. In the summer of 1776, they launched a massive invasion, landing thousands of troops in New York. Washington's army was outmatched and outgunned. The Continental Army suffered a series of defeats and was forced to retreat across New Jersey into Pennsylvania. The situation looked bleak, but Washington did not give up. On Christmas night, 1776, in one of the most daring moves of the war, Washington led his troops across the icy Delaware River. The next morning, they launched a surprise attack on the Hessian mercenaries in Trenton, New Jersey, scoring a crucial victory. This victory, though small, was a turning point. It boosted morale and showed that the Continental Army could win against the professional British forces. In 1777, the tide began to turn. The American victory at the Battle of Saratoga was a game-changer. British General John Burgoyne's surrender marked the first significant defeat for the British and convinced France to join the war on the American side. The French provided much-needed supplies, money, and military support, including a powerful navy that would prove critical in the final stages of the war. But the war was far from over. The winter of 1777 to 1778 at Valley Forge tested the resolve of Washington's army like never before. The soldiers faced freezing temperatures, hunger, and disease. Many did not survive, but those who did emerged stronger, thanks in part to the training they received from Baron von Steuben, a Prussian military officer who drilled the troops and instilled discipline. This was the crucible in which the Continental Army was forged into a fighting force capable of standing up to the British. The final chapter of the American Revolution played out in 1781 in Yorktown, Virginia. British General Lord Cornwallis had positioned his army in Yorktown, expecting support from the British Navy. But the French fleet, allied with the Americans, blocked any chance of escape by sea, while Washington's forces closed in on land. After weeks of siege, Cornwallis had no choice but to surrender. The victory at Yorktown effectively ended the war, although it would take 2 more years for the Treaty of Paris to be signed, officially recognizing American independence. The war was over, but the work of building a new nation had just begun. The leaders of the revolution, now the Founding Fathers, faced the enormous task of creating a government that could unite the diverse and independent-minded states. They debated, argued, and compromised, eventually producing the Constitution of the United States, a document that would lay the foundation for the nation's future. The American Revolution was more than just a war for independence. It was a revolution of ideas, a belief in the power of the people to govern themselves, in the rights of individuals to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These ideas would inspire future generations and movements for freedom around the world. Today, the United States stands as a testament to the courage and vision of those 13 colonies that dared to dream of something greater. They didn't just defeat an empire, they built a nation, one that continues to strive toward the ideals of liberty and justice for all. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the American Revolution. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more historical deep dives. Until next time, remember, history isn't just about the past, it's about understanding who we are today.